Hello, welcome to The Long Road. My name is Chris Roberts, and we're going to talk about a number of things today. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is Kenya, Iraq, Syria, Tunisia, Libya, Somalia, Morocco, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Egypt. What do all of these nations have in common? They had serious terrorist acts over the past week. We spent a lot of time talking about Syria and some of the other countries in the region. We've been told all 10 of these countries have significant importance to United States security interests. In Iraq, a large number of people were killed at a funeral. In Pakistan, even larger number of people were killed while attending church. In Kenya, last time I heard, it was about 68 people, minimum of 68 people have been killed. At least 175 had been injured, wounded and injured. We don't know how many of those are in critical and may pass on. Basically, it's up to 10 hostages, but listening to the news, some said the hostages were released. Some said 2 of the terrorists were killed. Other ones said the terrorists were dressing up as hostages and just walking out. I was watching a little bit on TV this morning, and there was explosions going on. It's been there for 3 days. And we were told in some places that 3 of the individuals are American-born. One is from the UK, another one's from Canada. And basically, they were imported into the Al-Qaeda network. But the strange part of this is Lou Piniella, who was the Secretary of Defense a couple years ago, stated that we only had Al-Qaeda on the run. Al-Qaeda was basically dead. There was only about 125 Al-Qaeda members left around. Osama bin Laden was dead, so we had defeated Al-Qaeda. Well, as we can see how Al-Qaeda is in Libya, Al-Qaeda is in Iraq, Al-Qaeda is in Syria, it's in Kenya. We did not defeat them, and we could never defeat them. And the reason, excuse me, before everyone gets up in arms, Al-Qaeda was a small group. Al-Qaeda was like the mafia or one of these other criminal gangs, whether it's the Bloods or the Crips or whatever. You can't beat them. You have to contain them. And that containment is a really important. You put necessary resources to contain them and limit their ability to cause damage. You can never prevent them from causing damage, but you contain them to limit their ability to cause damage. And so, but what we've wanted to do was, for example, Afghanistan, we went into Afghanistan to take away, to go after Al-Qaeda. We went after Al-Qaeda and they left Afghanistan. Then we went after the Taliban because we said Taliban allowed Al-Qaeda training camps. Well, the Taliban never attacked the United States. The Taliban really had no problem with the United States, but we were in Afghanistan and we stayed in Afghanistan, and then we helped put Karzai in power, and Karzai didn't like the Taliban, and the Taliban didn't like him, and so we as the United States put another corrupt individual in power because we thought that individual would be going along with us. And what's happened is Karzai cares less about the United States. He just wants our money. And because we support Karzai, the Taliban are now attacking the United States and killing the American service members and just waiting for us to leave sometime next year. And in the meantime, not only is the Taliban killing Americans on the battlefield of Afghanistan, they're killing all kinds of Americans in the United States because to finance their war against the United States, they've been growing poppies and they're producing cocaine and heroin and flooding the world market to get cash to be able to buy weapons and whatever, because where there's drugs, there's money, and basically there's a lot of times people will sacrifice all their principles just to get money. And so where the Taliban used to execute people for using drugs or selling drugs, now they go and say, well, we can look the other way right now because we need the money to buy weapons and to pay our freedom fighters. And so that just kept going on and on. So as we started, we kept going, we got to get Al-Qaeda, we got to get Al-Qaeda, we got to get Al-Qaeda. So we spent maybe about $2 trillion going after Al-Qaeda. And we can go and say, well, Al-Qaeda has never attacked the United States since September 11th. Well, we could go in and say that semantics one way or the other. Did Al-Qaeda attack the embassy in Libya? Well, if they attacked the embassy in Libya, an embassy is always sovereign soil. So if you attack an American embassy in any country, you're attacking or invading American soil. But we don't want to use that word as a terrorist attack. Right now, it appears that there were at least 1 or 2 Americans that were killed in Kenya. And so if Al-Qaeda attacked the mall, a high-end mall in Kenya, and killed an Americans, is that a terrorist attack? The Army major who just got convicted of murder of 13 individuals and sentenced to death, we don't go and call that an Al-Qaeda attack. We call that, even though he was an Al-Qaeda sympathizer, we call that workplace violence. And because it's workplace violence, it makes our numbers look good. Politically, it says we didn't get attacked, but the soldiers that got killed, they don't get a Purple Heart. They don't get a lot of the benefits. The soldiers that got wounded don't get a Purple Heart. To us, it's basically our politicians. It's like, hey, it's just like going to work at McDonald's and someone at McDonald's doesn't like the fact that you asked his girlfriend out for a date and comes in and starts shooting up the McDonald's. That goes as classified as workplace violence. But what's the difference between workplace violence and terrorism? It all depends how we want to look at it. But then we go to the Navy shipyard down in Washington, D.C. Was that terrorism or was that workplace violence? Or what was it? Was the individual, while he was a contractor, was he really able to go and work on that base? Was he required to work on that base? Because as we look now, you find out he was in Texas, he was in Virginia, he was up in Rhode Island, and so he kept moving all around, and it seemed, where was the individual getting his money from? How was he able to go? And he was staying in some pretty good hotels. And so it's hard to say how you want to put that. Is that a terrorist act or is that workplace violence? All I know, whether it's workplace violence or a terrorist act, there's still people that are dead, people that should have never been killed. And so, well, I've got this one from the Chicago Sun-Times of August 9, 2013. I was in Chicago in a meeting, and the title is, "We are terrorized without the terror." Let's see if I get this right. The world has been transfixed for weeks over the controversy about the United States intelligence surveillance of phones and emails, but leader of Al-Qaeda still used electronic communications to plot terrorist attacks. Then, just in case the terrorist chieftains missed the uproar over the potential for massive eavesdropping, the United States government let it be known that our spies listened into on their conservations. You need to add the punchline, Dumber and Dumber. You can't make this stuff up. Truth is stranger than fiction. If terrorists communicate in a way that we can hear them, but they don't know we're listening, it would seem to be a bad idea to tell them. Makes pretty sense to me. Then again, what if al-Zawahiri knew that our spies were listening, but how could he not know, and fed us a line about an attack to create panic and havoc? Speculation like that is making the rounds of the blogosphere. In short, a lot of turmoil and panic was created without any fanatic having to detonate a single suicide vest. And so when President Bush was president, we used to talk about that red, blue, yellow, whatever that code was, and how it always seemed to go up whenever there was an election coming on, or if there was an important bill, or something really important in the government. And so it seems now, with the new administration, every time something seems to be going wrong or we need to change everything, we'll go and close down the embassies because we think they're going to be attacked. How do we know they're going to be attacked? Is because we listen to al-Qaeda, who says we need to attack them, but we've told al-Qaeda that we listen to their conversations and read their email, but then we still believe everything that they put in their email. And so, you know, if I was a little kid, you know, a teenager, and my mom comes and says, you know what, Chris, every morning after you go to school, I'm going to read your diary, okay? So I guess what I'll do tonight is I'll just write in my diary. I'm going to go hang out with my friends. We're going to get some drugs, and we're going to have some booze, and we're going to have a good old time at this house. And so my mother would read it, and she'd be completely prepared for it, and then as if I was a complete surprise. Why? And then I go, oh, Mom, just fooling you because you were reading my diary. I wonder how many of us, as we were growing up, did that to their moms and dads once we found out they were reading some of our stuff. But we were only kids, and most of the time it ended up being a joke. But now, how many times do we call wolf about terrorism before the American people just shut off, the world just shuts off, or we lose complete credibility when we say we have a problem? I don't know how many times, but I think that time is getting really close. Going to move on over to an article in the Keene Central called VA Finally Making Progress on Claims Backlog. It says, there are signs of progress. On June 20th, the department said it had processed 97% of the claims that had been pending for 2 or more years, providing decisions in more than 65,000 cases. As of Monday, more than 751,000 claims that were pending nationwide, 457 of them for more than 125 days. The VA standard for timeliness, that is down 25% from a peak of 611,000 stalled claims in March. And that figure doesn't include the 250,000 claims under appeal. Well, there's a lot of catch, and people don't always told the whole story. When we talk about VA claims and how long it takes and all this other kind of stuff, it's political fodder for both sides. Everybody's jumping on the VA system and going back and forth, and it seems like no one really wants to come up with an answer. Well, this answer is really simple, and it would cost basically nothing, and you wouldn't have to be a genius to go in and execute this plan. And basically, it would solve the great portion of the problem. You remember the ice storm of 2008, where some people lost power for up to 10 days? And when the power was going out, PNSH, Public Service of New Hampshire, said, you know what? If you're way in the background and you've got this nice house and you're 10 miles away from everybody, you're going to be the last one to get your electricity on. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the cities and the other communities and get the electricity on so we can help as many people as possible to get their power as quickly as possible. Well, and that's the right way to do it. If the VA wanted to do it correctly and wanted to solve the problems, they could take a portion of the people they have right now doing the claims and say, hey, everyone who has been released from active duty in the past 90 days and has filed the claim, we're going to send all these claims to this section. Why? Because everyone who got off active duty had to do a separation physical. And on that separation physical, it lists if you had any medical problems. And so if you list no medical problems, then your opportunity for a claim is greatly reduced. Because if you go on your discharge physical and you say, hey, I have a bad knee, my knee's giving me a lot of pain, or I have a bad back, or I'm ringing in my ears, you can't be discharged. You have to see a medical doctor, and a medical doctor has to evaluate for every one of those things that you're saying, and that medical doctor will then put that in your medical record. Okay? And it'll also be on your discharge physical, so all that will be there. And almost anybody can get a copy of their medical record before they get off active duty. They're told over and over again, get a copy of your medical record. So you have your discharge physical, you have your medical record, then you go and file a claim with the VA if you need to file a claim with the VA. And then the VA can then look at the stuff, bing, 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 and they could settle a lot of those claims in the 125-day. In 2 to 3 months, brand new claims could be settled. But no, the VA doesn't like to do it that way. As far as the VA is concerned, it's like going to Hannaford to the deli. You take a number, and no matter how difficult your claim is or how unreasonable your claim is, you're in line. So, and I know of a number of individuals who have done this. They've worked 30, 40, 50 years, and they get ready to retire, and they go, you know what? I'm going to go put a claim in for the VA. I'm going to put a claim in for PTSD. I'm going to put a claim in for a bad back. Well, or, you know what? I'm 84 years old. There's one, I'm making 94, individual, 94 years old. I'm going to put a claim in for total disability and basically unemployable, so I can get 100%. 94 years old, been on Social Security, haven't worked for like 25 years, because I'm going to put in for unemployability. Because the VA has one of this thing is, even if you're over 65, even if you've worked and even if you collected Social Security, you can apply for unemployability. So here it is, I'm 94 years old, I'm going to apply for unemployability, okay? And I served in World War II from 1943 to 1945. I've gone my whole life, worked and everything. The 2 other individuals I personally know served in Vietnam, successful businessmen, go bang, bang, bang. And they go, you know what? We're going to apply for this. You have every right to apply for it. And so they say, okay, where's your discharge physical? Maybe the individual still have their discharge physical. If they don't have their discharge physical, then the VA has to go and track down, go to the National Archives that hold all the military records. Then the VA is going to have to track down your medical record and then your discharge physical. They're going to have to get that. They're going to have to look at it. And they're going to say, but wait a minute. You came in at 18, you got out at 20, and on your discharge physical, there's nothing wrong with you. You didn't put one thing down. You never got injured. You never got shot. Bingo, you did your 2 years. And now you're claiming bad back, you're claiming diabetes, you're claiming this, you're claiming that. But yeah, that's from my military service. But wait a minute. You're 125 pounds overweight. And you've done this, and you've been a construction worker, or you've done this. and you got high blood pressure. When you got, when you left the military, you weren't overweight. You left the military, you didn't have high blood pressure. When you left the military, you didn't have ringing in your ears. You didn't have bad knees. You didn't have bad back. And so the individual goes out and gets other doctors to say, yes, it's service connected, and it goes back and forth, back and forth. So something like this could take 2, 3, 4 years. While this is going on, now guess what? You have an individual being tied up with a case that could take 3 to 4 years. And it may go either way. Now, just think of someone who's 21, 22 years old, just got out of the military and wants to file a claim. Now, if I'm spending 3 to 4 years on a claim that someone is filing for something that happened 40 or 50 years ago, and I have no medical records whatsoever, and we're trying to recreate this, and we're trying to recreate that, and we have doctors going back and forth, and right behind that individual, there is 20 people that just got off active duty last month. You know what? I can't work with them until I take care of this guy. In no business would it make sense whatsoever to operate like that. And it's right here. There's signs of progress. As it 97% of the claims that have been pending for 2 years or more, providing decisions in 65,000 cases. Okay. There's 400, okay, it's right here, 751,000 claims, 457 are more than 125. So let's see, that's 43. So 293,000 claims are less than 125 days. So we've got basically 300,000 VA claims that are less than 120 days. So why aren't we, me, if I'm a business guy, and I have the ability to get rid of 300,000 out of 450, plain and simple, to get rid of almost 40% of my backlog of simple claims, why wouldn't I do that? It makes no sense to me. It doesn't make any sense. That's when a bureaucracy is so embedded among itself that it can't see any daylight, and most of the problem is they're causing it themselves. Because, like I said, basically 300,000 claims less than 120 days old. And in most cases, they'll have the medical records, everything, discharge physical, x-rays, CAT scans, everything they would need to make a decision would already be there. And so you can easily clean it up just like that. But you don't get anything politically by doing something like that. Then the other part is, here's what you have to go. It goes, in the time it took the VA to process Alan Legg's claim, the Mammoth Lake native had 2 vehicles repossessed and fell so far behind on his mortgage that he lost his home. The 270-day wait also took an emotional toll. It was ingrained in me that it was my job to take care of my family, he said, and I felt like a complete failure. Okay. A veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, Lake 31, struggled to find a civilian job when he left the Navy after the birth of his daughter in 2002. He tried working as a cook at a Florida bar and grill, but was hospitalized 3 times because of strain on his back and knees, which he injured in the service. Okay. One, you would go, he was in the Navy. Okay. He's a veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq. Was he in the combat area or was he in country? It doesn't say right here. He says he worked, but he was hospitalized 3 times because of strain on his back and knees. Is he overweight? Is there other problems? He said he injured these. But but way they write it, in the time it took the VA to process Adam Legg's claim, the Mammoth Lake native had 2 vehicles repossessed, fell so far behind on his mortgage that he lost his home. Okay, so 284 days. So basically, it took 9 months, okay, which is not really a long time. Try to get a workman's comp disability or try to get Social Security disability. 9 months is pretty good time. The other part is he's in Mammoth Lake, California, and but he said in 2009 he tried working as a cook in the Florida bar and grill, but was hospitalized 3 times because of strained tooth. So the question is, when did he file his claim? Where did he file his claim? If he filed his claim in Florida and then he moved to California, did he ask to have his claim transferred? Okay, so it goes and it makes you feel bad. He had 2 vehicles repossessed and fell so behind on his mortgage that he lost his home. In 9 months, what the thing is saying, in 9 months, he had nothing. He lost 2 cars and he lost his mortgage. He lost his house. Okay. And what he's done, he was granted VA disability, and he now gets a disability check of $1,100 per month. Although he now receives $1,100 a month disability, the VA experience still leaves a bad taste. When you feel like the VA doesn't care, you feel like the country doesn't care. Someone willing to give their life for the country deserve a little bit better. But when you go in and someone who's negotiated the VA system and looked at this, when you take it piece by piece, it looks like the system is really screwing everybody over. Yes, some people are getting screwed over. There's a large number of people are using the system. And disability filing shot up in 2010 after the VA took steps to expand eligibility for compensation for conditions associated with exposure to herbicide, Agent Orange, the Gulf War illness, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And it goes, at the same time, a new generation of veterans were returning from Afghanistan. The bad economy, too, played a role, officials said, making veterans more likely to seek compensation for ailments they might have shrugged off in the past. So part of it comes in, we have a system that treats a claim in order, irregardless of how much time and effort it's going to be, irregardless of if it looks like it's going to be a valid claim or just a waste of time claim. We've got people who go in and, for example, PTSD, the VA is in a situation, we have people claiming PTSD all the time. And how do you turn around and tell someone, no, you don't have PTSD? And so it is much easier for the VA to say, yep, you have PTSD, where there's 30%, 40%, 50%. And the other thing is, 50% disability in the VA is only about $600-700 a month. So we really, really have to be careful with this. Plus also, not telling the rest of the story, in 1986, the VA system was changed dramatically. Up until 1986, the VA was basically for servicemen that were injured in time of war or had service-connected disabilities. Up to 1986, a lot of the VA hospitals and every point around the country were closing down because basically there was only about 3 million veterans that were eligible to use the VA system. And also another thing that was happening, and it will link to today, was that General Motors, U.S. Steel, a lot of the industries in the rust bucket were going bankrupt. And when they were going bankrupt, they were doing away with their pension plans. They were doing away with their health care plans. And when you go to Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, West Virginia, a lot of the individuals who were in the unions were also service members. And so what Congress did basically was say, okay, we'll expand the VA to all veterans. And so they expanded to all veterans. So now all the veterans that lost their job and lost their health care from U.S. Steel or any of these other rust bucket industries could now go to the VA. And then the VA was so overwhelmed, then they created the lists 1 through 8. So now you'd be able to go to the VA based on an income qualifier. Because prior to putting an income qualifier, I was out at Irvine, California, and there was people from Newport Beach and some of these really wealthy communities. They'd see their own doctor, and the doctor would write prescriptions, and the doctors would send them down to the VA, and the VA was paying the prescriptions to really wealthy people, people who had served a couple of years in the military. So they had to put a stop forward on that. And so basically that about tripled the amount of individuals that were now into the VA system. Well, as we kept going closer and closer, getting closer and closer to modern day, we now had a problem with Medicare. And it's like Medicare reimbursements. And so what the VA started doing was opening more clinics and community block centers, because basically what the government was realizing was every time that we can get someone, a veteran, to go to the VA instead of to go to use Medicaid, it saves the government money. Because the way the government does it, there's 2 different systems. And so one of the things when I was coordinating the DAV, and there was an article in the King Sentinel, Larry Kafloff, and I couldn't understand, I'm not saying anything, it was in the newspaper, understand why once a month, he's a World War II veteran in his 80s, why once a month he would drive past the clinic to go all the way to White River Junction to get a blood test for his accoutrement check. And I'm going, wait a minute, this guy has Medicaid. Why can't he just use his Medicaid to go to the clinic? Well, because what we've done is we've convinced a lot of the veterans, yes, you got to go to the VA, you got to go to the VA. And I've seen reports that show the government saves at least 30% on a dollar, on every dollar that it's spent every time a veteran goes to the VA clinic or hospital instead of going to, say, Cheshire Clinic, Cheshire Medical Center. And has no idea on the quality of the health delivery. So, but the other benefit, how it saves money is, and I've talked about this before, Mr. Kafloff, if he has a medical problem and he wants to see a doctor, he has to drive all the way up to White River Junction. Now he can do the clinic up to White River Junction, sit in urgent care, and then take a number, sit in urgent care, and be seen. And he may be triaged, given something really quick, and sent home and given a doctor's appointment, a primary care doctor's appointment. And it could be anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, maybe longer. I got a letter from White River Junction last week that say to make my doctor's appointment for October. So I go in, I said, okay, I got to get my doctor's appointment for October, and they go, oops, sorry, the next available one is in January. And I said, well, you know, the doctor ordered a CAT scan, and I had a growth in my chest, and she wanted me back. And it goes, well, sorry, got to wait until January. That's the earliest we get. Well, if someone cancels, we'll try to give you a call, see if we can get you in. That's the difference between the VA system and the regular system. If I get my CAT scan here, I'm going to get an answer within 24 to 48 hours, and I'm going to see the doctor pretty quick. I can go up to White River Junction and get a CAT scan and may not see the doctor for 2, 3, 4 months after taking that CAT scan. And so part of it is that's one way to save money. I also got a pamphlet from the VA talking about veterans and how they want veterans to sign up for the VA healthcare system. Because if any veteran that signs up for the VA health system is classified as having medical care under the Affordable Care Act. And part of that comes in, the question I had is, well, if you have health care under the Affordable Health Care Act, then you would not be qualified for tax subsidies. And so, but what does it do for your family because they won't have VA health care? But no one has been able to give me an answer to that. But to me, it appears that every single veteran that signs up and gets into the VA medical network, single one, then would not be qualified or would not be able to buy health care on one of the state or federal run exchanges, and also they wouldn't get the tax credit up to $7,000 back either. And so, again, that thing is popping up, and nor would they have the ability to go in and see their doctor whenever they want. Because, for example, I do not have the right to call my doctor at the White River Junction. I can call and someone will answer the phone, and I can talk to a total stranger, and then that stranger will then pass that on to my doctor. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't like calling up someone on the phone and say, I have this problem, this problem, this problem. Will you pass it on to my doctor, and hopefully my doctor will call me. But the problem is, what happens if that individual doesn't write it down correctly? And something that may be serious is the doctor goes, oh, that's not important. I can get back to him within 72 to 96 hours. So that's part of the thing with the VA, and it just goes on and on. There's so many problems with the VA. There's good things with the VA. There's bad things with the VA. And I just wish people here would not be, it's like William Vann, a disabled Army veteran, right, makes his point to VA representatives during the second annual Veteran Fix-It held in a town hall style setting at the War Memorial Veterans Building in San Francisco. And when you go in and look at this, here's what's going to go. The amount of claims as the system goes, this is what, if we went and gave everybody who filed for a disability everything they thought they asked they deserved, it would add billions, tens of billions of dollars onto the disability budget in the VA. But the second part is, what would happen, what would the American people do as they continuously saw people over and over and over again who are abusing the system, who they know don't have a problem, but know how to get to the right doctor and was getting disability while other people were working hard. It's one of those, legally you're supposed to give the people what they legally responsible for any service-connected injury or illness. But at the same time, you're supposed to protect the taxpayers from giving money to unqualified individuals. And whether it's Social Security, disability, workman's comp, whatever, we all know of individuals that have gained the system. We all know people that are taking a check. We all know people who have handicapped license plates that don't deserve a handicapped license plate. It ticks a lot of people off, But the question is, how do you draw that fine line in between? There's something wrong when you don't give somebody who actually did something and needs it, but there's something wrong when you give somebody disability when they don't deserve it. And so, and as I end this up really quick, when I go to Authority now receives $1,100 monthly disability check. $1,100 a month disability check. 2 cars and a mortgage. You can't pay 2 cars and a mortgage in California in Mammoth Lake on $1,100 a month. He had 2 jobs as a short order cook and couldn't work at it because it hurt his back. So something is wrong here. And part of the thing is, what is really wrong is that the quality of the reporting, I think a lot of reporters don't ask a lot of questions, or you have reporters reporting on something that they have no idea whatsoever. It made it sound good, but $1,100 a month, I don't see how you can even live in Mammoth Lake unless you're living in a cabin in Mammoth Lake, California. So again, that wasn't, part of it was truthful, but it wasn't completely truthful. And another one that was in the Keene Sentinel, New Hampshire ethics, a systematic problem. The state has some of the most permissive laws on the books. And it goes, when I talk about the influence of lobbyists in Concord and the fact that our election and ethical laws are so weak, people are amazed I'm talking about New Hampshire, since we have this image of large, voluntary, corrupt-free legislature. But the reality is people out there become more and more cynical when they see this stuff. I don't think this is one-off and just issue today to me. This is a symptomatic problem our policymakers really need to look at. And so we have a long and admired tradition. This is what the governor says. We have a long and admired tradition of citizen legislation, of folks who come here not as a career to do people's business, Hansen said. You can't expect legislators to be here to do this work without having other employment. Well, like I said before, as I go around the country, go to these different meetings, New Hampshire legislative body is a joke. Yeah, you're the ones who got 400. You're the ones who's got 500. You go, no, it's only 400. And wait a minute. Oh, in Keene, for example, I represent more people as a city councilor in Keene than I do as a state rep for Keene. As a state rep in Keene, I'm only responsible for about 3,400 people. And people make, they just look at us. And when they go and say, we have a long and admired tradition of citizen legislative folks who come here. Well, when the citizens legislation was formed, it was formed by wealthy Protestant white male who owned a lot of land. And they gave the pay was really low because they didn't need the payment. They used it to, to get paid, but they were wealthy. They didn't need to do it. And, well, basically, New Hampshire, who are so low paid that we get a lot of people who are citizens willing to serve, and many of them are folks who might have been or connected to those with public sector jobs. And so we do, okay? When we like to go and say people don't come in there for careers, there's about 1/3 turnover every 2 years in the state of New Hampshire, in the House. But if you go in and you look on both the Democratic and the Republican side, there's been people there have been 20, 30, and some going on 40 years. If that isn't a career, I don't know what is, okay? And when you look at a lot of people that are in the State House, They're not poor people. They're not. A lot of them are well off. And I'm a retired colonel. I get a good pension, so I'm in the State House. There are not many poor people in the State House. Yes, there are people who are collecting Social Security or collecting pensions, but they've also been there for a long time. People can get wined and dined. People can lust over the power. People can lust over some of these controls. But a lot of people go to the New Hampshire State House for their own personal benefit or their own personal agenda. If I want to ensure synthetic marijuana should be legal, I may go up to run for the State House and go and push bill after bill after bill after bill. It wouldn't even matter if I owned a synthetic marijuana store in New Hampshire. I would be allowed to do it because that would be no ethical violation. And most Indians say, but that would not be an ethical violation. And I can't tell you how many people put bills in that personally benefit them. Because in New Hampshire, we have this rule, as long as it doesn't benefit you any more than anyone in your class. So if we want to go and put 15 people who are firemen, teachers, policemen on the pension board, on a committee, and come up with a bill to increase the pension, they could do that because they would not get any greater benefit than any other retiree. That's the way we do it up in the state of New Hampshire. That's how lax it is. Because when my daughter works at the Maplewood Nursing Home, about 4 years ago, they were changing the rules that limit how much a nurse could work. And I excused myself. And they're going, what'd you do? I says, well, this bill would have an effect on my daughter. Okay? It would have an effect on how she could earn money and whether she's going to earn more or less. And it goes, well, no, you don't have to. It'll be the same effect on anyone who has a wife or a daughter who's a nurse. And I go, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to vote for something that could benefit my daughter because that's not the way you're supposed to do it. But in New Hampshire, it doesn't matter. You can do anything you want that could benefit you as long as it doesn't benefit you any more than anyone else. That's what we call them. As long as it doesn't benefit you more than anyone in your class. And the other part is we like to brag about the $100 per year. The reason we have $100 per year, in my opinion, is to ensure we limit people's opportunity to be in the State House. Just think, if it was, say, $3,000, $4,000 a year, and some women say, hey, you know what, I can pay for daycare and I can still go to Concord 2 days a week for $3,000, $4,000. I can do that. But for $100, who's going to pay for the clothes? Who's going to pay for the cleaning? Who's going to pay for your food? Plain and simple. You can go up and get a pizza and a soda up at the State House, and it's $5, $6. All of a sudden, your $100 doesn't go very far. So basically, by keeping it at $100, only the people who have other resources can go to the State House. And so when you go in, if someone was to go in and take through the Blue Book, which has them all, and went through every state rep, and look how long every state rep has been there, and then look at what the person used to do. Well, for example, if we go to the Speaker of the House is a retired math teacher, okay? So basically, retired math teacher, in the old system, as soon as you worked 5 years, you got vested. Once you got vested, you could retire. So you retired from the education system, and you're not going to get your pension until maybe you turn 60. But basically, I could retire as a math teacher, get out of college, work 5 years, retire as a school teacher at 27, 28 years old. And I can say, hey, I'm a retired school teacher, which in fact you are. You're just not collecting money. So it comes up, how do you make your income all those years? Part of the ethnic problem, the other former speaker, Gene Chandler, didn't have a good job, but he was having a corn roast where he got $64,000 of people donating and everything on the corn roast. So people are finding ways to cover their cost in the State House. Other people drive all the 3 times a week just so they can get the extra money to help cover their costs. If you drive 100 miles a day, plain and simple, let's see, 100 miles a day, it's worth about 55 bucks. You get about 55 bucks a day for gas. So if you get a nice little car that gets 25 miles to a gallon, that's 12, so that's 2 gallons, 4 gallons. So maybe you pay 15 bucks for gas, so you make an extra 40 bucks a day. So there's 3 and 4, so that's 3, that's 120, 4 weeks, all of a sudden you're making 500 bucks just on mileage that really doesn't show up anywhere. And so that's the frustrating part. Yes, New Hampshire, all intents and purposes, we really don't have any kind of ethics requirements. Oh, yes, we do have one. You cannot accept a gift or a meal for more than 25 bucks. There's a whole bunch of other things you can do, but you just can't do that. And that's the New Hampshire way. And so go down to the last 5 minutes. I've been going in and I've been watching the news, and I am seeing we spend weeks over Syria. We're spending weeks over trying to defund Affordable Care Act. And then now we're getting ready to, I think there's 4 days left before the end of the year, before Congress goes home. For one, they shouldn't be going home. So we have no budget. We've got the debt ceiling. And part of the game with the debt ceiling is the Secretary of Treasury has raided and borrowed about $250 billion to cover in shenanigans. So even if he was to raise the debt ceiling $250 billion, we'd be right in the same position because he still has to pay to come up with $250 billion to pay back the other individuals. And coming to it, it's coming down to the people in Congress, the Senate, the President, the Cabinet, these government agencies. They don't represent us. They are worrying about their own self-interest. Plain and simple. It's the party and the individual. Ted Cruz, he doesn't care. All he's worrying about was the people that elected him, okay? He forgets, just like Rand Paul and just like Chuck Schumer and some of the other ones, okay? Yes, you were elected by Kentucky, Texas, or New York, okay? You were elected to take care of the interest of the people that elected you, but not at the expense of all your fellow Americans. Just because you want something in New York doesn't give you the right to say the other 49 states have to suffer. In Texas, okay, if Texas wants unlimited guns, as a senator, you can fight for that. If New York wants limited guns, you can fight for that. But if the majority of the Americans want the minimum, that's what you should be doing, not fighting for your own personal benefit. And every time the politicians fight for their own personal benefit, we, the average American, pays, and we're going to pay big time. Plain and simple. The debt limit is going to go up. The debt is going to go up, okay? We're still going to find ways to pump money into Department of Defense. The interest rates are going to go up, and means we're going to have to pay more money on interest, which means the debt's going to go up or we're going to have to cover. Nancy Pelosi will continue saying there is no more, there's nothing to be cut. The cupboards are bare. Well, the cupboards are not bare. Things are going to have to be cut. If we don't find a way to cut them, Sequester 2 will come in, and again, it'll be across the board cut. And then something will happen, and someone from D.C. will say, you know what? If it wasn't for sequester, these people at the Naval Yard would still be alive because we would have more people there. Something goes wrong, we're going to blame it on sequester. But nope, none of us, not in Congress, not the president, not the Senate, not one of them are ever going to look in the mirror and say, we're in this situation is because we refuse to make a decision that could possibly threaten us. We have put our own personal benefit, our own personal self-interest over the self-interest of our fellow Americans. And so it is so much easier to blame it on sequester, to blame it on the Tea Party, to blame it on Fox, to blame it on Chuck Schumer, to blame it on Keystone. Blame, blame, blame. It's so much easier to do it. And guess what? Everybody who's pointing the blame, they're sitting in the penthouse figuring out who to blame next. And we down on Main Street are suffering big time. That's my problem with the government today. And so, see you on the long road. Bye.